Prydwen might be cooked. Kinda. Okay, I guess it's not really fair for me to say cooked. That's really harsh. I'm just using that as an opener to the video, but we need to talk about Prydwen and like the tier list and yeah. Over the course of the last few patches, Prydwen, or it's not even that the tier list is bad, right? I don't hate the tier list. I don't hate anyone there, and you know I don't hate you, bro. No bad blood, nothing like that for boys, right? I have told you that at some point the games, parentheses with an S, gonna get to a point where you have to start adding certain things or more, if you will, to appease the masses and then appease what's happening in the game. But ultimately, this comes down to the criteria still being the same as it was patches ago, right? Almost a year ago, the criteria hasn't changed to my understanding. And when I say changed, I mean like a drastic change, where we're still stuck at, if I'm not mistaken, 888 traces and no signature light cones. The only things that free to play is going to acquire, but the gacha light cones are in there for the 4 stars, and of course still being at E0s for our standard characters. But unfortunately, the game is no longer at that point where these things matter. Even me, the traces guy, I can't have 888 traces. The game does not allow you to have 888s if you're trying to push beyond what the normal means are. And if we're using this tier list as some form of an in-game tier list, where it's usually labeled as Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, or Apocalyptic Shadow, and I feel like it's fair to go ahead and just push these traces to max. But we can talk about that in a bit. Your boy got a sponsor, all right? Like, whoa there. Hey, let me talk to you real quick. Are you tired of grinding? Want an adventure that fits in your pocket? Well, get ready to bake up some fun with Go Muffin, the coziest MMORPG on mobile and the sponsor of today's video. Choose your hero from fierce warriors to cunning mages and embark on a journey through a whimsical world full of magic and muffins. What's that? You said you don't have any time for endless grinding? No problem. Go Muffin's idle gameplay lets you level up even when you're offline. It's the perfect adventure for players on the go. Team up with friends to conquer epic dungeons and defeat fearsome dragons. Coordinate your skills, unleash powerful combos, and claim awesome loot. Express your style with a delicious variety of outfits, mounts, and adorable Mellowmons. With over 600 summons to collect, your adventure will be as sweet as pie. Even better is you can join a guild, make new friends, and chat with players from around the world. Go Muffin is more than just a game, it's a community. So are you ready to rise to the challenge? Go Muffin officially launches on December 3rd. Pre-register now and get ready to bake up a storm. Download now and discover a world full of fun, friendship, and endless possibilities. So for the most part, and for those that may not be aware, let's go over, let me turn on the light real quick, but let's go over the things about the tier list. The categories and tags are something that we already know about, which is gonna be damage dealer, specialist, amplify and sustain, advancing, buffing. They just added some color to it. Love this change, by the way. Ratings and meta lines for those that don't understand, and you're more used to the like D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, things like that. Apex characters are gonna basically be your S tier and S plus tiers. Meta characters are gonna be your A through B, if I'm not mistaken, or A through C, something like that. But at some point, the 0.5s become like a plus symbol or a plus status. You have to A plus, B plus, whatever. Niche characters are going to be your tier 3 and 4. These are going to be close to your C's and D's. And then forgotten ones are going to be your F tiers, right? Boom, you're done. Last, we can go over the criteria. Criteria is that you have manual play. You're using optimal team composition and support characters, which this is the important one right here. This is the important one right here. Characters at level 80, this is fine. It's like whatever. All major traces and skills upgraded to level 8. This is the important one. Characters equipped with level 80 non-limited 4-star or 5-star light cones. That's also important in today's time. Battle Pass light cones aren't taken into account because you can't obtain them without spending. Characters equipped with 5-star upgraded gear with optimal main stats and substats. Eidolon level 0 for 5-star characters and Eidolon level 0/6 for 4-star characters. These are pretty much going to be the criteria that we're going over for today. And this is why I say, and to be fair, we went over this on my stream. I want to point that out. This entire video that I'm doing now is like a super short version of what we did on stream. I don't want to give you guys an hour and a half video, to be completely honest, but on stream, there was something in particular that was said to me. It stood out enough to be able to explain my feelings towards Prydwen's tier list over the course of the last few months. And it's that it has an inconsistent basis on the criteria, or rather an inconsistent judgment using the criteria, but also contesting the game. And a lot of what we talked about broke down some of these things, but me, the Zila main, the Zila defender, if you will, there was a couple things that I wanted to go over for myself. So let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. I'm going to show you guys. And then once you see everything, then I'll explain. I'll probably have some gameplay in the middle of it, things like that. Base Shot being in tier 0, that's fine. Firefall being in tier 0, but then you have Rappa still down here in tier 1, Boot Hill in tier 0.5. This is not the case, right? Rappa, it's been proven. If we look at the data data for Memory of Chaos. I'm going to use this one, which is basically going to be their character usage over time, as well as the average cycle clear. Now, the way this average cycle clear works, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically going to add both sides. So I think they do like +3 for one side or something like that. So you do want, like, if you do a 3 clear on side one, you add 3 on the other side, and then it's averaged out. I'm not super sure how their average count works. I just know this is what Sarah told me beyond that point. What I really want to point out is the fact that Rappa, right, is also next to Firefly. If you can't see this, boom, Rappa, Firefly right beneath that. This isn't to say that Rappa is significantly better than Firefly or anything like that. What I'm pointing out is that Rappa has consistently outperformed Firefly when it comes to these last few MOCs. Basically, ever since Rappa's been released, Rappa has been outperforming Firefly. She's more versatile. He fits into more teams. You can get away with a less restrictive team when it comes to playing Super Break, and you're not glued to the same characters that Firefly is glued to. Of course, again, taking into account what Prydwen is using, which if we go back here, criteria, manual play, using optimal team composition / support characters, right? So you have a lot of this that goes into play when it comes to my own judgment of certain characters, because I've seen these characters being played to a very high degree. None of this other stuff matters too much to me, right? Like Linkship going up in tier 0 and along with Adventuring, I agree with that. That's fine. My main point here is to talk about the discrepancies that I have when it comes to this. And I think that's why I said Prydwen's cooked earlier, not to say that they're actually cooked, but what I'm getting at, too inconsistent right now. Ratio getting bumped down to tier 1. All right, that's fine. Now we ask why Ratio is getting bumped down to tier 1. We go up here to the change log, and we should be able to see Ratio, the hyperinflation of HP that's happening in the last few phases wasn't kind to Dr. Ratio, and for the first time since his release, he's showing signs of fatigue. While his single target damage output is still good, he's struggling to kill things fast enough and spreading his chalk damage around when there's multiple chunky enemies he has to deal with, even with the full power of the follow-up team behind his back. If I were to go over this for Dr. Ratio specifically, this just isn't true, or rather it's more of a stretched truth, if you will. And this comes into play with the latest MOC, or rather the most recent MOCs. And this is where I'm going with the inconsistencies. The latest MOC has the TV dinos, right? Which means that you have to either single target something or spread out damage. And when you're playing with Dr. Ratio, spreading out your damage isn't always the best thing. 1, because of the debuffs, and 2, because they don't die. They're still on the field, you know, so you really just want to target down one thing and do as much damage as possible. The other thing for that is Sverog. Sverog is not imaginary weak, so you're not really getting anything from that. Just for visual representation, I wanted to bring this up so you guys could actually see what's going on. You have Sverog down here. Boom, Sverog is going to have that 2.3 million HP. He's going to have that speed of 158. You're going to have fire, electric, wind, so on and so forth. And for the most part, here's where I'm getting at. I don't see how it's possible, like physically possible, for them to gather the data for everyone playing these characters, which is something that we saw in, I literally just had it up here. I don't see how it's possible for them to gather all this data and then also have the traces be settled at 888, right? Because this is user data that's being gathered. There's no way in hell everyone applying for these all has traces at only 888. They're only using certain light cones. They don't have Eidolons on their 4 stars, or, you know, their standard characters, anything like that. It's a lot to reduce out of a data sheet, if you will. If you were compiling a bunch of information and then trying to, like, okay, take this out, code, take this out. If this equals this, then this happens. If this doesn't equal this, remove this, things like that. A lot of that goes into play. But primarily, if you guys made such a big deal about me not having my traces maxed out, I would assume everyone else is going to have their traces maxed out as well, especially when it comes to collecting data. If we're looking at this from a pure data perspective and we're collecting everything, half these characters shouldn't be up here with traces at only 888. Clara is not supposed to be up here. Dill Pickle's not supposed to be up here. Jing Yuan, even with Sunday, is not supposed to be up here with traces at 888. You have to find some form of consistency here, where it's like, okay, we're just going to max out traces. Everyone has max traces and we can assess things based off that level. It's fine. Or we're going to make it so that it's way more accurate, but someone has to be playing this game and they have to play everything with 888. And then you have to get them to play at some form of a more optimal level, if you will. When I say optimal, I'm speaking specifically on certain teams like Rappa or the Boot Hill team, Acheron, Yunli with the counter, because again, manual play. You have other teams down here with Zila, even QQ for that matter. Now, granted, I definitely don't think QQ's in tier 3, but I also can't confirm that. I'm not playing QQ. My whole thing about QQ has always been that she has too much RNG. When it comes to Zila, and I can actually show you guys here, Zila has tons of opportunity to advance herself forward And you often end up getting times where if you've advanced yourself forward so many times, just using her basic attack or finding a way to mix in her speed plus basic attack from the skill, you actually get to go immediately after that, right? So you'll have something where you can trigger resurgence for yourself. You get your 2 turns, and then you get to go immediately again, like no one else is behind you. It's just Zila. You'll go again, and then she gets to do the same thing. She'll have her ult. By this point, you get to pop an ult. You possibly get 2 more resurgences on top of that, and you do a lot of damage. Then you have Sunday or Branya or Sparkle or Robin, whoever you have right behind her to advance her forward, repeat the process. This is something that I know is not happening when it comes to the manual calculations, or rather the data inputs for the game. Now, I do understand if we're going again, looking at MOC and what's going on MOC, right? This is MOC 12. MOC 12 is not favorable for Zila. Not favorable for a lot of characters that don't happen to be lightning specifically, right? Now, the worm, or not the worm, but the swarm bug, the boss over here, or the second wave. Now, this is favorable to Zila, but then you have to deal with this. And this is really bad for Zila because guess what? These guys are directly countering Zila's resurgence. So when you have a character who summons other characters that you would benefit from, who are directly countering resurgence, well, now you have to play in a way where it's like, okay, I can play with Zila, I can use Luocha. Luocha's going to use his ultimate, take away other buffs, which is amazing. I'm so glad Luocha has that, but he takes away other buffs, and now I can trigger my resurgence. Now my ultimates can one-shot the autopilot or anything of the sort, right? And then you can start to play their game, but you're still playing against someone who doesn't have Quantum Weak. Now this brings in the question, do I bring Silver? Do I bring Ting Yun so I get more ultimates? Am I using Sunday? Am I using Robin? Do they have signature light cones? Are their traces maxed out? There's so many different factors that come into play here that it just, for the way that I'm looking at this, it's way too inconsistent. I don't want to say anyone's not playing the game. I only say that they don't play certain characters. Now, this is of course being biased because Zila's been steadily going down, 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 down. Pretty much since Jing Liu's got here, they've been trying to figure out a reason or find different reasons to pull Zila down and down and down when that's just not the case. Zila is still one of the highest performing characters in the game if you know how to play her. And I understand someone's gonna say, bro, this is Zila copium over here, bro. Listen, Blade was just being dogged on. I'm gonna bring this to irrelevancy. Blade was just being dogged on for not having enough damage, for not being strong enough, for not being able to clear waves in a timely fashion, or whatever the case may be. Blade is in tier 1.5. You're gonna tell me that Blade is now a better character than Zila. And I'm purely looking at this from a tier list perspective. If we're looking at this, if I was a random user, a new user, and I came over here looking at this tier list and I said, oh, Blade's tier 1, that's probably A tier, right? Tier 1.5, B plus tier, something like that. Oh, Zila, limited character. I like Zila. Oh, she's C tier. Can't pull her, don't like her, right? There's no way that Zila's damage performance, her performance overall, has just significantly dropped beneath Blade. Now, again, if we're basing this off of what is currently in the MOC, Blade is favorable because this is all Wind Week. Also, that's my bad, guys. Earlier, I was showing you guys that wasn't the right MOC. This is the current MOC, still Sphera, but the second lineup is different, which of course was going to be the TVs. TVs are very bad for Zila. The entire MOC side 2 is just not good for Zila, so you can't even play it the way you want to play it. MOC 11, however, has the bugs. This is 100% favorable for Zila to be able to get your 0 cycles, no sustains, things like that. On the other side, it's whatever, but you're fighting against Aventurine. I was going to call that budget part. You're fighting against Aventurine, so you don't want that. Going back to this and rounding this up, the problem that I have is it's just really inconsistent. That's it. So many things about what's happening on the tier list right now are just inconsistent. They're inconsistent based on whether or not you're optimally playing the character, which is something that we have in the criteria, right? Using optimal teams, manual play, so on and so forth. A lot of these characters don't belong where they are. But if we're looking at this MOC based off what it's updated to, which is the Memory of Chaos, current version of Memory of Chaos is going to be 2.9 or something like that, whatever the current MOC is. If it's based off of that, then the same thing that I said like 5 different MOC patches or updates ago, whatever. Actually, it was like 5 months ago, whatever. Point being is that if it's based off current MOC, so much of this changes. The only thing that stays the same is this right side over here. The supports and the sustains are probably the only thing that stays the same. Gallagher might swap out, right? If there's no fire week, if it's not super break centric, you might have a Gallagher bump down, but everyone else pretty much stays in their exact same spot. If you have more of the Luofu guys, Luocha might get bumped up because of his ability to remove all their buffs. This is something that you're alternating in between because of the MOC changing. But if it's not based on that, then everything else needs to stay the same, right? You have to fix things. You have to adjust things like that. That's why I say it's too inconsistent right now, because it's based on MOC, but we know for a fact that's just not what it is. Again, if I come back over here, What is the current MOC? MOC 12. There's no physical weak here. Yun Lee's not clearing this. Yun Lee's amazing. Don't get me wrong. Yun Lee is not pulling in 2 cycle clears or 3 cycle clears or 1 cycles or 0 cycles in the same fashion to be up here in tier 0.5. Acheron is 100% clearing both sides. He's destroying Banana Monkey TV Robos. He's destroying Spherod to the point where if you're playing this team optimally, you're getting at most 2 cycle. And I say a 2 cycle because of the HP inflation that's going on right now. Had this not been a thing, you'd easily be getting a 0 or a 1 depending on your playstyle. But she clears that. Yun Lee is not matching that. So why are they in the same tier? If this is based on current MOC, they can't be here. You have to be willing to adjust everything. You can't be afraid of the people's voice or the masses of the people to adjust things if the tier list is based off current MOC. But if this was just a straight up tier list, like, hey, based on the current version of the game, this is where this is. Let me show you something. One last thing that I want to point out is going to be Nikke. The reason I'm bringing up Nikke is because Nikke's tier list is based off the current version of the game. Nikke has in-game modes. Nikke has a bunch of different things that alternate weekly, right? There's a new boss for whatever in-game they're doing every weekend or every few days. It just depends on what's going on. So the characters themselves, just like in Star Rail, have their own base kits and they work with certain teams or other characters or archetypes, whatever the case may be, but they're labeled and stitched, they're done. The only time you see these things change is when there's a new boss or a new something new happens with in-game. We add something new into the game and it's like, hey, this boss is here for a little bit. None of these characters work anymore. We need to readjust. Hey, this new character just came out, cough crown. And then she completely dominates everything that used to be. Before, this used to be a thing where the schoolgirls and the bunny girls were at top of the top, right? But now it's like, yo, you need a crown. Crown is a must pull character in this game. You need a Red Hood. Red Hood was anniversary. Hey man, Red Hood does everything. You need a Red Hood, bro. Litter is like day 1 character. You need a Litter. You know what I'm saying? Like Killer D or Killer Wife, right? She comes out. Mare, which is from the event. You don't have this character. You can't do a lot of these different team comps. Like, for instance, my Summer and East team, baby girl, I love you so much. Anyway, I can't do that without Mare. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it's static. Everything about this tier list is static. It's not based on certain in-game modes or this, that, and the story. Now, they do have PvP. They do have boss killers, which again goes into the in-game kind of stuff. And then they have story. But you see these very, very seldom change between the characters, right? The story at low is telling you, hey, you need this because Rapunzel, right? Rapunzel's going to heal you or revive you, things like that. Memory of Chaos has an opportunity, or rather Prydwen has an opportunity to simply, if you're going to make this MOC, Pure Fiction, and Apocalypse Shadow, you need to make some drastic changes. But that's it. I don't want to waste too much of your time, guys. I really just wanted to point this out. Also, before y'all run away, right? The video is not done. Hold on. I did need to do some form of, I keep trying to call them litmus tests. They're not litmus tests. I did some form of testing, right? Like I needed to compare these things. So I had to compare Blade. I had to compare Himiko. I had to compare Jingliu, compare Zila, so on and so forth. And through my testing, I was actually able to find out that if we're bringing Sunday into account, right? You guys saw my video with Jingyuin. You know my opinions about Jingyuin and Sunday. I think it's a great team or a great team for right now. I think that's the perfect character, perfect harmony unit for Jingyuin. However, one of the things that I always mention is how if something indirectly buffs Jingyuin, then it will directly buff another character. If something directly buffs Jingyuin, then it will indirectly buff another character. For layman's terms, what that means, Sunday directly buffs Jingyuin because summon meta, right? Summon, bring it up forward, action advance, doing cleansing, everything in the book. Yeah, this indirectly buffs every other hyper carry in the game that also wants to be advanced forward, but they don't have a summon meta. A good example of this would be Zila, and I did my test specifically with Zila and with Blade. Now Blade, I believe it's called Blade Works, or Unlimited Blade Works is the team that people were using with like Sparkle, Bronya, Blade, and then Lynx or whatever else. So I pretty much did the same thing by replacing Bronya with Sunday on the team and using Sparkle, Blade, Sunday, Lynx, or whatever else. Honestly, the sustain didn't matter to me because Blade's going to do whatever he wants. Now, Blade is able to keep himself alive. He's very much a self-sustainer. This is great for Blade. Awesome. Amazing. I love this. Blade is not clearing in 2, 3, 1 cycles, whatever the case may be, against some of these bosses without having 10, 10, 10, signature light cones, possible Eidolons, whatever the case may be. He's just not doing it. Now, if I come down to Zila, Zila is in a similar boat. Zila is also not clearing without maxed out traces, signature light cones, possible eidolons, so on and so forth. And even worse in Zila's case is the fact that most Zila comps are running no sustains. Why are they running no sustains? Because she's so strong and advances herself forward along with everyone else on the team that she kind of doesn't need a sustain unless you're really getting hit a lot. Now, with DOT currently in the MOC, from the bugs, DC, whatever the case may be, those could prevent you from getting a clean clear. However, this is something that goes into optimal team compositions, whether or not your Zila has a sustain or no sustain, so on and so forth, because sustainless teams have to be brought into account for these tier list metrics, if you will, because as I mentioned before, Super Break optimally runs with no sustain. Why? Because Mei is going to work as your pseudo sustain, and your whole goal is to kill them when they're broken. So if she makes it so they get delayed when they're broken, that's your second opportunity to take out the enemy. But if we're still looking at Super Break teams using Gallagher, and not to say that Gallagher's bad, right? That's what makes Gallagher so good, or makes Lynxia so good, is they work as a great sustain in Super Break comps. So it gives you the comfortability that you don't have to worry about that. But if you wanted a little more damage, a little bit more aggressiveness, then you would remove these characters. Probably not Lynxia, because actually you can make a DPS Lynxia, but whatever. Anyway, point being is that you would remove these characters in order to add something like a Pela, or bring in a second DPS character. This is where you'll see me do stuff like Rappa and Boot Hill, or Rappa and Firefly and Boot Hill, whatever, right? So I just want to round this off, guys. I know I was rambling. It's the morning. I haven't had my coffee yet. Relax, chill on me, okay? I didn't want to give you guys a whole hour and a half of me yapping about the tier list, what needs to go where. If you want to see that, the VOD is still up on Twitch. You can go watch it. As of right now, I'm pretty much done. Tier lists are some of the things where we always have to take them with a grain of salt. That's fine. I don't really have an affiliation towards anything, right? Like, I'm not like, oh man, if this tier list doesn't have my character here, I'm gonna crash the fuck out. Which, by the way, y'all are completely using that term wrong. I get it, internet slang. But holy fuck, you guys are running that term into the ground in the worst way possible. Like, y'all are saying it for anything at this point, man. Somebody sneezes wrong, oh my god, he's crashing out. You don't have to do that, but whatever. Anyway, I'm out of here. Let the inconsistencies become more consistent, and I'm sure the tier list will fix itself. It'll become a lot better. Prydwen's under a lot of heat right now. They've been messing up with Wuthering. St. Tontus is calling them out. The Zenless tier list, which I don't want to touch that. You guys know I'm a big fan of Zenless, but I have a lot of opinions about Zenless from the creator perspective, from the player perspective, and from the tier list perspective. So like a community as a whole, I do not want to touch that tier list, okay? The tier list, in my opinion, is like 79% wrong. I made up that number, but it's a really high number. I don't want to touch it, okay? Zenless is one of those games where, very similar what's going on with Wuthering. I'm gonna just say it this way. The same stuff that people are complaining about with Wuthering and the tier list right now, all tier lists, is the same thing going on with Zenless. If you can't do certain stuff, you should not be labeling these characters in this platform or this certain way, whatever. But again, not my place right now. We're on the Star Rail channel. I can't say my user outro was inappropriate for YouTube. Every morning. I can't say my user outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Mail you later. It's always in the mornings, dude. I mess it up every time.